Good evening and welcome to the April 20th, 2023 regular Board of Education meeting. We'll start with the roll call. Ms. Haas.
Mrs. Bukta?
Here.
Mr. Rogers?
Here.
Mrs. Selly?
Here.
Mrs. Reynolds? Here. Mr. Nickram?
Here. And we'll start off with Pledge of Allegiance.
I think that was on purpose, huh?
And it is customary with the start of every board meeting as we read off our vision and mission statement. Our vision statement reads, achieving distinction in all that we do, while our mission statement reads, cultivate an inclusive, high-performing culture of growth and community. Moving on to the comments from the audience on agenda and non-agenda items this evening. As a reminder, our policy is the presiding officer of each board meeting at which public comment is permitted shall administer the rules of the board for its conduct. The presiding officer shall be guided by the following rules. Each statement is made by a participant shall be limited to 3 minutes in duration. No participant may speak more than once on the same topic unless all others who wish to speak on that topic have been heard. Participants shall direct all comments to the board and not the staff or other participants. Participants shall address only topics within legitimate jurisdiction of the board. All statements should be directed to the presiding officer. No person may address or question board members individually. The presiding officer may interrupt, warn, or terminate a participant's statement when the statement is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, obscene, or irrelevant. Request any individual to leave the meeting when the person does not observe reasonable decorum. Call for a recess or adjournment to any other time when the lack of public decorum so interferes with the orderly conduct of the meeting as to warrant such action. The portion of the meeting during which the comment of the public is invited shall be limited to 30 minutes unless extended by a vote of the board. And with that, anyone may address the podium with their name and address. And
Yes, so we have Rebecca Christ and Sylvie Beers, Martin Street and Navajo Court.
Dear community of Fort Atkinson, Board of Education, faculty, administrators, students, and families, tonight I am not here to blame anyone for what this school district is currently going through. Instead, I and many other students are here to tell you the impact these decisions have already made on us. I'd like to begin by sharing a story with you all. Yesterday while I was sitting in my AP Psych class, my classmates and I were surprised when a teacher frantically came into our class because they had lost their job and they didn't know what to do. This teacher knew that teaching was their past, present, and future and was unsure how to handle the news. Imagine what it feels like to be in a student's position where they watch the teachers they admire walking in and out of the office or are approached by administrators knowing they're about to lose their job. All while the teachers are on edge not knowing if they'll be the next to be called down or if they'll even have a job at the end of the day. Coming into school today, the change in culture at our school was readily apparent. Students are on edge not knowing what their education is going to look like in the near future, just as much as staff are on edge not knowing if they'll have a job next year. In our community, we advertise being one fort, one team, one district, and one community. The behaviors coming from the board and superintendent only blaming the community for what has happened, and the behaviors coming from the community only blaming the board and superintendent for what has happened, is not demonstrating all that we preach when we say one fort. We understand that no matter what we do, there are going to be less positions filled next year. What I ask you to think about, though, is the people you are going through non-renewal with, especially Miss Samantha Tress.
Ms. Tress is more than just a teacher. She is someone any of her students can come to seeking help with her classes, other classes, and anything else going on in their lives. Ms. Tress is a mentor to not only her students, but any student that walks by her class, and she never fails to smile or greet them. Ms. Tress is a teacher that shows up to school at 5:30 in the morning and stays until 11:30 at night some days to make sure her lesson plan is perfect the next day for her students. Ms. Tress is someone who gives up her lunch and prep periods to help students with whatever problems they may encounter, no questions asked. Ms. Tress is someone who cares about each and every one of her students. Ms. Tress is someone who teaches and comes to school because she gets to, not because she has to. Ms. Tress is someone who loves her job and her students more than I thought anyone could love their job. We've seen the cuts you've made and how they've directly affected the students of Fort Atkinson in our education. I would like to know what cuts were made at the top of this district that don't have the same monumental impact on students daily. We've needed to do better, and clearly we still need to do better. Thank you for your time.
And next, we have Kenzie Paskey on Briar Lane.
Hi, my name is Kenzie Paskey, and I'm a junior at Fort Atkinson High School. Tom Bracco once said, "It's easy to make a buck, it's a lot tougher to make a difference." And that's exactly what Ms. Trez does, make a difference. Going into this year, I didn't know much about Mrs. Trez. But once I started getting to know her throughout the 3 classes I've had with her this year, I've begun to love her not only as a teacher, but as a person. She has continuously inspired me and pushed me to do my best and achieve my goals. And unlike most teachers, she helps me achieve those goals. She has personally helped me get a job shadow and a career path that I want to pursue. She opens her room to students to get help during their study halls, and if a student ever has a question, she will explain it one-on-one with them until they understand the topic. She truly loves her job and her students and genuinely cares about her students' education. Mrs. Trez is hardworking, selfless, funny, and humble. She has been teaching for 5 years and has continuously put in 110% effort to ensure that her student gets the best learning experience possible. She has spent countless nights getting less than 3 hours of sleep to work on learning tools that will help enhance her students' learning. She continuously puts others before herself. Mrs. Trez has taught me so much. Not only has she benefited my education, but I believe she has made me a better person. She has given me opportunities that I can and will affect my future. Mrs. Trez always puts her students before herself because of her passion for teaching, and she would continue to do that if that meant her students would get the best education she could give them. I think that not renewing Mrs. Trez's contract would truly be a disservice to all future students that would miss the opportunity to work and learn from such a pure and amazing teacher. I know I cannot simply make these budget cuts disappear, but I ask you, take the time to again think about the impact that continuing Mrs. Trez's non-renewal would put on the students of Fort Atkinson High School and their education. Thank you.
Next, we have Maren Magnuson from Craig Street.
Hi, my name is Maren Hagenson. I'm a little nervous, so just kind of bear with me. Today at 7:45, let's start this off. I have medical occupations, first hour with Ms. Trez. At 7:45 today, I learned that she has the possibility of losing her job. So at 8:15, I had made a petition to help. I'm nervous, okay?
That's right.
Sorry. I had made a petition that I will read. This petition was created for the purpose of teacher retention. Its cause is to keep Samantha Trez as a teacher at Fort Atkinson High School. As one of the few teachers who connects with her students and builds bonds with them, the students cannot see how she is not valuable to Fort Atkinson High School. We, the students at Fort Atkinson High School, urge our school board to change their decision about who they are letting go. At 8:30, I had a petition and I had a clipboard and I had signatures. At noon, I had 150 signatures signed. At 3:10 today, I had a total of 353 students who signed. I would say, give or take, that it's about 950 students that go to our Fort Atkinson High School. That's about 37% of students who signed. And I had the petition with me if you would like to see it. However, I want to touch on a couple of things. Samantha Trez has not only built bonds with her students, but she connects with them. Not a lot of teachers do that. There are teachers that you will remember for the rest of your life, and she is one of them. She's not worth letting go. She cares about her students' mental health, and it shows. She teaches medical occupations and biotech. She's the only teacher who does that. So anybody who wants to go into the medical field will no longer have a sort of gateway with that. She gives great notes, and she's one of the very few teachers that I can understand her work. But she makes a difference, and she makes an impact, and she makes a change. I think that she's just too valuable to let go. And if she makes such an impact on 353 students, that I don't see what the problem, sorry. I don't see why we are letting her go. It's just a mistake, and I would like the board to see that. Would you like the petitions?
Sure, we're going to bring it forward.
There are 10 pages here, front and back.
Great. That's fine, thanks. We'll just, you want to take your clipboard? And I'll take a look. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Rachel Sneathen on Grove Street.
Good evening. My name is Rachel Sneathen. I live in Fort Atkinson. My son attends school here at Luther Elementary and is a 5th grader. I speak to you as a parent, a past school board member, an advocacy leader for both state and national platforms, and as a fellow community member. To start, I would like everyone to take note of the official government website to your state representatives. It is www.legis.wisconsin.gov. And your representatives in the Fort Atkinson community are Senator Stephen Nass. He's Senate District 11 leader. His phone number is 608-266-2635. And your representative, Scott Johnson, is your State Assembly District leader. And his phone number is 608-237-9133. The Fort Atkinson School District will be among the first of many school districts in the coming years to make cuts just like you're having to do tonight. We're seeing this all over the state. At some point, communities across the state will be confronted with the same effects of rising interest rates, unstable wages, gaps, construction costs, insurance premium hikes, and continuing disinvesting in our public school education. At some point in time, other communities will say no to paying extra taxes to supplement school funding that the state took away over several decades. This has been a long time coming, and it's very unfortunate for the people that are in this school district. Our representatives in our state work for us. We need to call them. We need to band together to make a difference. I would like to ask everybody that's in this community to set aside differences and take care of our children in our school district. We need to provide them with the support they need to get through their education and opportunities that are provided to this school district going forward. These children are the ones that will pay the price for our inaction now, which means we need to step up. We're the adults. We need to act. As someone who works in developing affordable housing and multifamily housing in my career, I can tell you this is all part of a larger systemic issue. Our Wisconsin state government is broken, and it has been broken for a very long time. But public education has taught me that we can fix it by working together to reach across aisles and solve these issues. Our Fort Atkinson School District administration, our board, our staff, our teachers, they deserve better. But most of all, our children deserve better. Thank you for your time.
Next, we have Ben Pfaff of Sherman.
All right, I'd like to bring up a few points in my time. First point is stop raising my school taxes. I know you're going to try to do another referendum with different wording next election. Don't do it. The bank's broke. I'm making the same amount of money even though I'm $10 higher as I did 20 years ago. My money goes the same distance. It's tough. It sucks. It sucks losing jobs. I've always had to look for a job. Always. I'm lucky. I'm like you teachers. I'm damn lucky. I'm a state employee. I got great benefits. I got a great option. I got great experience to get them benefits. The best thing you students can do is go for the major you believe in and get a teaching minor. That's where I screwed up. I didn't get the teaching minor like I should have. Right now, you guys, after 20 years experience, could be making $100,000 with $32,000 in benefits. Yeah, it's on the webpage, DPI, look it up. It sucks to lose your job. Welcome to union work. 5 years in, you're low man on totem pole. Tough shit. It's the way it works in a factory, the way it works in the real world. All over. So, the second thing I'm going to bring up is something that's really bothering me a lot. You guys are dealing with it in the school system. Is the exploitation of our young women in our school system. I'm asking the school board right now to raise your hand if no men should be allowed in the women's bathroom or locker room. I'm asking the board for a straw poll right now, and no answer to the question means the school board and school system agrees with the exploitation of our young women. Thanks for your time, and I'm out of here.
Ethan Toller, Zida Street.
Mr. President, I think it should be emphasized that the board cannot respond to any of the comments that are being made here
Yes,
today.
correct. And we're also ensuring that we're not directing comments to particular board members and the entire board. We're not able to respond in this particular manner. Thank you.
Ethan?
Hey, my name is Ethan Teller, and first off, I would like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak, and to thank you to everyone who signed the petition, and thank you to Marin Hagginson for creating it. This isn't going to be an attack on anybody, but a criticism of the decisions being made in our school. I know this isn't a decision anyone wants to make. Miss Tress was a teacher in our science department. She's a teacher first and a friend second. Unlike a lot of teachers, she has a way of teaching that can make anybody interested in her class. From my experience in a lot of classes in this school, there's only two ways a classroom can function. Everyone talks, no one learns anything, or no one talks, and we get talked at for about an hour and we don't learn anything. Miss Tress did both. She doesn't talk at us, she talks with us. She created a space for us to actually effectively learn. Her teaching style was engaging and thought-provoking. It made me look forward to her class every day. Miss Tress is passionate about her job and genuinely cares about us as her students. Losing a teacher like Miss Tress will have a significant impact on the quality of education our students have, including me. Teachers like Miss Tress are the ones who make a difference in students' lives. They go above and beyond to create a learning environment that is engaging, challenging, and supportive. They inspire their students to learn and grow and help them develop the skills they need to be successful in life. It's a shame this district is being forced to fire any teacher. In this community, education should be a top priority. But as we have all seen this week, it just isn't. We should be investing in our teachers and students. Ms. Tress is the kind of teacher all teachers should aspire to be like. No teacher of Fort Atkinson deserves this. When I turn 18, I will register to vote, and I will vote to support public education. I encourage my peers in this community to do the same. Thank you.
Matt Maskell, Sherman Avenue.
My name is Matt Maskell. I've taught science at the middle school for 17 years. It goes without saying that the recent failure of the operating referendum will have a profound impact on the school district and the community of Fort Atkinson. It necessitates tough choices, many of which will be felt most immediately and most directly by school district staff. While I have no doubt that the people making these tough decisions have acted with integrity, compassion, and the best interest of students, staff, and the community in mind, at this point, very little has been shared regarding the criteria used for staff reductions. This includes information on how areas were identified for reduction, as well as how individuals from these areas were selected for non-renewal. As budget reductions and preliminary notices for non-renewal are presented this evening, I urge all of you to provide full transparency regarding the criteria and the decision-making process used in determining which positions to eliminate and which individuals to issue non-renewals. True teamwork requires honesty and trust. In this moment, transparency benefits the community, whose will the actions taken tonight reflect, the district staff members who will continue their employment with the district next year, and most of all right now, the individuals receiving preliminary notice of non-renewal this evening. Thank you for all your hard work and leadership in these difficult times. Your continuing commitment to providing the students of Fort Atkinson with high-quality public education is much appreciated.
Consent agenda.
All right. Thank you for those comments, and we're moving on to the consent agenda tonight. Dr. Abbott?
Yes. Robert's rules provide for a consent agenda listing several items for approval by the board in a single motion. Documentation concerning these items have been provided to all board members in advance to assure an extensive and thorough review and will become part of the permanent record. Items may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any board member. This evening, you are considering item A, minutes of the March 16, 2023 regular meeting, the April 6th special meeting, and the April 18th special meeting. Item B, personnel, accepting the retirement request effective at the end of the school year of the end of the 2022-23 school year of Anthony Swantz, 1.0 FTE social studies teacher at Fort Atkinson High School. Item C, high school course proposal for fall of 2023. Item D, authorization to dispose of equipment no longer useful to the district. Item E, the driver's education contract addendum. Item F, gifts to the school district. And gifts to the school district. This time, a donation from the Whitewater Movie Theater of 40 movie passes and 6 large bags of popcorn with an approximate value of $300 to Luther Elementary. Item G, budget transfers. Item H, payment of district bills and the treasurer's report.
All righty, consent agenda is in front of us. Does anybody have any further comments or questions or like to pull out an item tonight this evening? Okay, looking for a motion.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
All right, we have a motion by Ms. Sully, a second by Ms. Rogers, and a roll call, please, Ms. Haas.
Mrs. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mrs. Bukta?
Yes.
Mr. Rogers?
Yes.
Mrs. Selly?
Yes.
Mr. Nickram?
Yes. All right, moving on to non-instruction part of this evening's agenda. We have Ms. Sully with comments from the clerk.
An election for the school board was held on Tuesday, April 4th, 2023. The Board of Canvassers convened on April 6th, 2023 at 3:30 p.m. to verify and certify the results. There were 2 open seats on the school board. Candidate Matt Loop received 2,555 votes. Corey J. Nickram received 2,691 votes. And Amy Reynolds received 2,641 votes. The elected board members, Corey J. Nickram and Amy Reynolds, will take office and begin their 3-year term as school board members on Monday, April 24th, 2023. The district's operating referendum failed with 3,463 no votes and 2,513 yes votes. The district is grateful to the community for their participation in the April 4th election.
All righty, thank you. And moving on to Dr. Abbott and Jason Demrath for the budget reductions presentation.
This evening, our Director of Business Services, Jason Demarath, and I will present budget reductions for the 2023-2024 school year. As Mr. Nickram shared with us at the top of the meeting, our vision, achieving distinction in all we do, and our mission to cultivate an inclusive, high-performing culture of growth in community. Our community has responded favorably to our results-driven strategic plan and related goals, as well as our demonstrated commitment to improvement. As we navigated the charge of the school board over the past couple of weeks to make cuts and implement a financial strategy to be successful with a future referendum, we want to be clear that the forward trajectory of the school district needs to remain our primary focus. Our current strategic plan is where we are grounded in this work, and that is what will be presented this evening. We will be providing the board with an administrative team's recommendation and the context around those recommendations by, one, revisiting the strategies utilized to make cuts and still meet our strategic priorities. Two, to review cuts that have already been made to offset financial shortfalls. Then strategies and considerations our team used in developing the additional cuts for your consideration. Then reviewing the proposed additional cut package. Looking at the impact on the district operations of the cumulative reductions. Then sharing the future financial position of the district as a result of the proposed additional cuts. And then finally, we will share the next steps and timelines for enacting and communicating those cuts. Let's begin with the strategies that we have been asked to use in making these strategic priorities. The board may recall a similar slide from various presentations over the past couple of years. These were the strategies that the Board of Education asked us to meet our strategic priorities as we considered budget decisions and impacts. What you will hear tonight is continued implementation of these strategies, including providing a competitive compensation and benefit package for 2023-24 and in our financial forecasting, right-sizing our staff to align to current and forecasted enrollment and program needs, evaluation of all vacancies for possible attrition and restructuring, analysis of current programming to prioritize a return on investment and recognize opportunities for strategic abandonment. One item I'd like to specifically address is this first strategy. This strategy has been a focus and a challenge for the past 2 years as inflation has been rising. Our overarching strategy in our work since April 6th has been to preserve compensation and benefit packages for our employees, to ensure that we are competitive in attracting and retaining high-quality team members to serve the children and families of Fort Atkinson. As we shared on April 6th, these additional cuts will result in layoffs, and it is the intention of the strategy not to freeze or reduce salaries or benefits to avoid layoffs. As you will see, we will be asking team members that will be continuing their employment with us to take on more responsibilities as we move forward in our strategic plan with fewer staff. Compensating these team members at a fair and competitive level will be necessary to retain those employees that will continue to stay with us next year and beyond. Now I invite Mr. Demerath to share a review of the budget cuts to date and re-ground us in where we stand before making additional reductions.
As was shared at the board's April 6th meeting, the work to right-size our staffing to enrollment started a year ago as we prepared the 2022-23 budget prior to any operational referendum. Coming into this current fiscal year, we attritioned 7 full-time positions across the district, totaling nearly $540,000 in savings. Those positions included an elementary classroom teacher, a math interventionist, a high school math teacher, a high school technology education teacher, a middle school technology education teacher, the middle school library media specialist, and 1 library support position. Again, this list of cuts was made at this time last year, going into the 22-23 school year. In addition, as a result of the failed referendum, these cuts for 2023-24 were shared with the board on April 6th, as we look to take advantage of known retirements and resignations through attrition and restructuring. We are able to cut 16.5 positions across our district, totaling an estimated annual recurring savings of $1.2 million. These positions are the ones that we brought forward to cut to fulfill our promise to the community to cut a cumulative $5 million over the next 4 years as it related to the operational referendum. These cuts include a special education teacher, 2 elementary teachers, a high school Spanish teacher, a middle school Phi-Ed health teacher, a middle school English language arts teacher, an elementary art teacher, the director of communications, an elementary library media specialist, a high school tech ed teacher, a high school math teacher, a high school counselor, a middle school math teacher, a middle school math interventionist and coach, the middle school dean of students, and 1.5 full-time paraprofessionals. Again, this list of $1.2 million in cuts was already presented to the Board of Education on April 6th to take advantage of retirements and resignations following the unsuccessful referendum. This was our financial position that was shared with the board at its April 6th special meeting. You can see here that through the $1.2 million in cuts, as well as a negotiated health insurance renewal that is lower than what was projected, we decreased the projected deficit for next year by over $1.4 million. As a result, that new $5.4 million deficit was our starting point for our conversation about additional cuts going into next school year. As a reminder, that conversation on April 6th centered around various options for cuts for next year due to the failed referendum. In that conversation, one item that was shared was the importance of maintaining a fund balance to avoid short-term borrowing for cash flow needs at our low point in the year. This reference from DPI was shared as to how much fund balance a district should carry. In accordance with this guidance, locally, in order to avoid short-term borrowing, our fund balance at the end of the year would need to be in the $10 million range. I then shared that at the end of next year, we were projecting that we would have about $8.3 million in our fund balance, or $1.7 million less than is needed to avoid short-term borrowing. That $1.7 million is the option the board gravitated towards in advisement to the administrative team regarding how much more to cut from next year's budget. With that background, Dr. Abbott will walk you through the strategies we used for these additional cuts, what the cuts are, and the impacts of all of the cuts to date on our educational system.
The school district's operational budget has never been static. Each year, we work through the process of vetting current operations, efficiencies, and the evolving needs of our students and families. With the failure of our recent operational referendum, it has expedited our need for fiscal constraint. This evening's budget cuts were crafted with the consensus of the full administrative team as our best effort to achieve the desired fiscal results while best positioning our district to move to the future. In addition to the 4 strategies I outlined earlier in considering the additional cuts we were charged to make for next year, we had 3 more overarching strategies specific to how we considered what those cuts might be. We know we need to remain the preferred comprehensive school district in our area. As such, we worked hard to maintain programs and service models as much as possible to the benefit of our students. Although some programs and service models will operate differently in the future, we prioritized not cutting entire programs or entire service models. In our efforts, we focused on recurring expenses, those expenses that will have the most significant impact on the need for the stability of our finances and future operational referendums, that to offset insufficient funding from the state legislature. As all are aware, recurring expenditures constitute the vast majority of any school's budget. We'll be mindful of non-recurring cost efficiencies just as we have in the past. That said, supply budgets and other related non-occurring items have not been increased for several years, including these past 2 years where they alone had a combined inflation rate of 13%. Just as they have for every taxpayer and business in our community, the costs of goods and services have increased greatly for our school district as well. Managing the inflationary increases in prices of goods and services we purchase without a budget increase has effectively been a cut through the need to continue to determine the best value and use of our limited funds. We also worked hard to balance impacts to our students, staff, and multiple schools with the community's clear call for budgetary cuts. The cuts presented tonight are not a one-year only set of cuts. They are recurring expenses that we do not intend to reinstate given the current student enrollment. As such, our approach to make these budget cuts are framed on these 3 additional strategies. Remain a comprehensive school district and continue to grow. Focus on recurring expenses, not one-time expenses. Balance student, school, and staff impacts with the community's requirement for those financial efficiencies. As these strategies were utilized, the administrative team, in alignment with our mission and vision, are bringing forward a package of cuts in attempts to keep all opportunities, programs, and services in place for our learners. Fort Atkinson's kids are the sole reason for our school's existence. In service to our kids, all of the cuts and restructuring efforts that are being shared with you this evening were developed with a strategic plan in mind. We need to continue seeing improvement in our students' performance and growth. We also need to continue our pursuit to be the preferred educational option in our area. With all of that in mind, I will now outline the package of cuts being proposed. What is shown here are the recommended additional cuts for next year. These cuts include over 21 full-time equivalent positions totaling approximately $2.1 million. Some of these reductions will be addressed through retirements, attritions, and reassignments. These cuts also include 16 certified staff non-renewals, as well as additional support staff layoffs. The proposed cuts are as follows: 1 elementary classroom teacher, 1 elementary music teacher, 1 elementary Phi-Ed teacher, 2 elementary library media specialists, an elementary literacy interventionist, an elementary math interventionist, a middle school business education teacher, a middle school social studies teacher, a middle school literacy interventionist, a high school at-risk teacher, a high school English teacher, a high school social studies teacher, a high school science teacher, an orchestra teacher, a multilingual teacher, a half-time speech and language pathologist, the 4-year-old kindergarten coordinator, the gifted and talented coordinator, a half-time custodian, a total of 2.66 FTE administrative assistants, multiple elementary paraprofessionals, the stipends for the middle school athletic director and high school assistant athletic director, a reduction in some extra teacher contract days, and taking advantage of some efficiencies in athletic and activity operations. Today, we are bringing additional cuts in the amount of $2.1 million. When totaled, past reductions along with tonight's package of cuts will yield a recurring savings of over $3.8 million for the taxpayers of Fort Atkinson. A question certain many will ask is why bring recurring cuts beyond the requested $1.7 million? And there are 2 responses to this question. The potential for a smaller and successful operational referendum next year, and to better engage in some restructuring within our district to better align with declining enrollment, better utilization of our staff, and to build upon our programmatic strengths as we work towards our strategic plan. Our restructuring has centered on 3 cost-saving approaches: expanding the use of staff for instruction during the school day, maximizing staff transfers through license flexibility, and changing to program structures and delivery through the reassignment of duties. Through the expanded use of staff for instruction, all certified staff will be teaching more during the school day, resulting in a portion of preparation time and professional collaboration time moving outside of the school day. The district has and will continue to utilize the transfer of staff who offer licensing flexibility to minimize program impacts. Changing to program structures or delivery are related to the reallocation of absorption of duties. To say it simply, everyone across the school district will be doing more. In summary, we have leveraged all of these strategies and changes as much as possible to meet our budget cut goal, while continuing our pursuit of our strategic plan goals and focusing on how to best serve our kids as we reset organizationally for what the future of our district will be. All of these budget reductions assist us in better aligning with current and future enrollment projections. There is also something to be said for making several changes at one time, especially when highly effective work right now may prevent our need to be in the same position next year or in subsequent years. We have been working on the potential for modifying our student and staff schedules for some time, with particular focus at the middle school and high school levels this year. As a little background, beginning with the 2019-20 school year, the board approved changes to the elementary schedule that allowed for additional allied arts rotations and more teacher preparation time during the school day. Given our current circumstances, we can no longer afford the changes that were made in the past. At the middle school, the 8-period day has been made complicated with efforts to include collaborative staff and department meeting times, staff teaching in more than one content area, pull-out student service supports, and a wide range of elective course offerings. While the middle school will not see structural change in their schedule, The additional use of staff time for instruction provides an opportunity to address these perpetual challenges. The high school implemented the block schedule beginning in the 2016-17 school year. Since that time, additional staff have been needed to operate in this schedule. Additional staff equaled additional cost. While there are some at the high school who have seen some benefits to the block schedule, consistent student growth and learning has not been seen, nor has flexibility with staff, as that time is also limited. We know the high school's current block schedule is significantly more expensive than other schedules, and it is something that we can no longer afford. Principals and others will be sharing details on schedule changes for next year with staff, students, and families in the near future. Among all of our school's schedules, there have been widely different amounts of teacher preparation time during the student day, as well as the amount of student contact time. In order to meet our budget cut goals, as well as acknowledge that, in some areas, updating schedules based on student performance, they are critical next steps in both ensuring fiscal prudence and improved student performance in the future. To accommodate the required budget cuts and necessary restructuring, we will be utilizing our staff in some cases differently than how we have in the past. Beginning next year, we will be moving more teacher meetings and some preparation time and other responsibilities outside of the student day. While this may not be a change for some of our teachers, this will indeed be a significant change for many others. We are increasing the amount of time during the student day that teachers are with students. For the first time, there will be a consistent amount of preparation time across the elementary, middle, and high schools during the student day. Additionally, with cuts to support staff, some student supervisions and other duties will shift to certified staff, just as they are in comparable school districts. We believe these changes will best allow us to meet the fiscal demands of our community while maintaining our desire to be a comprehensive school district who is able to attract and retain students, families, and staff. Again, we have prioritized our learners in this package of cuts. No programs have been eliminated, and in doing so, these changes will have direct implications on our staff's workload and responsibilities moving forward. Learners were and will continue to be our focus. This restructuring is a strategic reset, given our fiscal constraints, for our district to serve learner needs well into the future. I'll now share how things may look different as a result of those cumulative $3.8 million in cuts. At the elementary schools, all elementary teachers will teach a greater percentage of the school day. We will maintain 4 elementary schools with reduced sections requiring some movement of kids across schools and higher class sizes, although still at reasonable class size levels. Classroom teachers will be providing some reading and/or math intervention. We will see an increase in shared staff across our schools. There will be a reduced frequency of music, art, library, and physical education instruction. We will maintain grade 5 band and orchestra through shared district music staff. 1 library media specialist will oversee the 4 elementary libraries. Our certified staff will assume more supervision duties. There will be less paraprofessional support in the classrooms. And we will be moving some teacher preparation time and professional meetings outside of the student day. At the middle school, all teachers will also teach a greater percentage of the school day. We will maintain course offerings through the reassignment of staff. There will be higher yet reasonable class sizes. English and math teachers will provide reading and math intervention. There is a potential for more shared staff across schools. The middle school athletic director duties will be reassigned to the high school athletic director. The dean of students' responsibilities will be reassigned to the middle school administration. And again, we will be moving some teacher preparation time and professional meetings outside of the student day. At the high school, all high school teachers, as the others, will teach a greater percentage of the school day. We will move away from the block schedule. There is the potential for more shared staff across schools. There will be a higher yet reasonable class sizes. There is the potential for fewer elective choices for some students. The high school library media specialist will oversee the middle school library. We will have a shared custodian position between the high school and elementary levels. The high school athletic director will assume greater duties, and again, We will move some teacher preparation time and professional meetings outside of the school day. At the district level, the Director of Communication and Community Engagement's responsibilities will be restructured and reallocated to district administrators. There will be a reduction in administrative assistant positions at the district level. The coordination of 4-year-old kindergarten programs will be moved to district administrators. The coordination of gifted and talented programs will be moved to district administration. Additional duties will be assigned to the Special Education Pupil Services Coordinator and the Academic Advancement Coordinator. There will be a need for increased coordination of shared staff, ensuring equity across schools, and again, an increase of professional responsibilities outside of the school day. I will now return things to Mr. Demarath, who will now share how these additional proposed reductions would impact our financial future.
You are all familiar with this graph showing our future deficits that we've been working to manage throughout these various cuts. With the additional $2.1 million in cuts for next year, we are now projecting a deficit for 2023-24 of $3.1 million. The impact of these recurring cuts on our future deficits is illustrated here by the green line. You can see that if we fly this projection out 5 years from now, we have reduced the annual projected deficit by over $5 million. The bottom line is this: even with cutting over 45 positions, totaling more than $3.8 million over the past 12 months, we're still looking at a $3.1 million deficit for next year and over $5 million the following year. We might be hard-pressed to find a better illustration of how the public school funding system in Wisconsin at the state level is broken, and how it is up to the people in this room and in this community to decide through a local referendum whether or not their local public schools are funded. We have seen this demonstrated through no allowable revenue increase from the state legislature over the past 2 years, resulting in a record number of referendums across the state. And even with cuts of over $3.8 million, a referendum next year will still be necessary, as that may very well be the permanent revenue model for Wisconsin public schools moving forward. With regards to fund balance, which maintaining a level above $10 million at the end of next year was our main target, we are now estimating an ending fund balance in June 2024 of just under $10.6 million. This should be at a level that would allow us to operate without short-term borrowing. You can also see that the following year, our fund balance went from under $1 million to nearly $5.4 million with these additional cuts. So we have met our goal in reaching that $10 million threshold in fund balance at the end of next year with these additional $2.1 million in cuts.
Now that we have shared the cuts and the impact of these cuts educationally, organizationally, and financially, I want to wrap up with what the next steps are to enact and communicate these reductions. Before the board tonight are preliminary notices of non-renewal for certified staff related to the cuts that we have outlined. There is no board action required related to any of the cuts outside of the certified staff. The board would then take action on final notices of non-renewal for certified staff at the May 8th special meeting, along with approving the issuance of contracts for other certified staff who will continue with us next year. Related to negotiations and compensation, we will propose market adjustments within our compensation system at the upcoming May board meeting. However, any CPI increase will require negotiations, which will commence sometime in the next couple of months and may be impacted by what we learn from the pending and upcoming state biennial budget. Following the Board of Education's consideration of cuts and restructuring this evening, there will be significant administrative follow-up work regarding the determination of specific details at the elementary, the middle, and the high schools, as well as the district levels. Additional communication to our families and staff will be forthcoming, and we thank you in advance for your patience as we share out more details through these communications days and weeks to come. We remain committed to our students, our families, and community as these changes preserve all student programming and will continue us on our path to achieve our strategic plan goals in the future. We continue to believe that the best is yet to come in our One Fort schools. That concludes our presentation of our additional budget cuts for the next year, and we would be happy to entertain or be part of any conversations or respond to any questions the board may have.
Yes, I have a question. What criteria did you have in deciding what cuts to make as far as personnel is concerned?
Mrs. Harper or Turnbull, are you comfortable responding to that, please?
Can you repeat your question one more time, Mr. Rogers?
What?
Can you repeat your question one more time?
Yes, I'd be interested in knowing what criteria or points of decision you had in making the exact cuts that you did as shown here tonight.
Well, we first reviewed and identified which positions needed to be reduced. From there, of course, we looked at those in the positions and looked at a variety of factors, which includes licensure, flexibility, flexibility in other areas to be reassigned, performance evaluations, and so on. There wasn't one specific criteria that we looked at for every single situation. In some cases, there was only one person tied to a specific position, and then in that case, the decision was made.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Dr. Abbott, can you bring us through, kind of the, of how we landed on these positions and just kind of bring us through, what this looked like on a decision-making on these particular positions? As far as how we got there to these particular positions, not others.
Well, I mean, I think that's what we tried to lay out related to the criteria that you provided us.
Sure,
And
yeah.
so what we did is look at just that. As we got into the process, knowing that the $1.7 million was the goal, it became evident that bigger things needed to happen to reset for us to be able to move forward into the future. So there's nothing arbitrary about the positions that are before you tonight. They're inclusive of the full administrative team, and it's been, a nonstop 13-day journey for us to be prepared to share initial findings with you at Tuesday's special board meeting and then to be prepared for tonight. But again, I mean, as the presentation laid out, we really are trying to approach this as how is it that we regroup and repackage, knowing that our community needs this from us in order to potentially support us in the future. So we certainly, as I'm sure you can imagine, nor do I think anyone would disagree, don't take any of these lightly. These are significant changes. But I do believe that if change is upon us, given the fiscal constraints, we need to take this opportunity in order to position ourselves to be the most successful as possible next spring.
Thank you.
Can you explain how the block scheduling and the scheduling at the middle school and the elementary school, how that's going to change? And also specifically how the block scheduling at the high school is the most expensive, type of schedule that we were looking at?
Yeah, so in the existing block schedule, 1/4 of a teacher's day was preparation time, and that made it difficult to use staff differently during the day as well. And given the way that schedule operates and filling it with students, it's known nationally to necessitate additional teaching staff in order to work that schedule. So that said, prior to the failure of the operational referendum, there was investigation happening with the high school schedule, not necessarily with the idea that the block would be abandoned, but how is it that we can best schedule the high school or any of our buildings to be as successful as possible with student results. So structurally, a block schedule is simply more expensive to operate. And when you return to a multi-period day, staffing levels decrease. Similarly, at the middle school, and having an awful lot of experience there, having teachers teach additionally during the day eliminates some of the difficulty that that building has had in scheduling evenly or providing all of the options for kids that may be afforded them. Structurally, the middle school schedule wouldn't be changing, the amount of teaching time would. And at the high school, structurally, those next steps would happen with that building moving forward as to what the format of that non-block schedule would be. And then, again, there would be a commensurate amount of teacher prep time during the school day throughout the school district.
And will that get rid of enrichment time at the high school also?
I haven't seen what the high school has come up with as a set of priorities, but I know that work will be commencing very quickly. And I'm very pleased with the set of priorities that have come through that scheduling work and how they believe that those minutes can best be used to the advantage of getting more kids in classes and getting kids really engaged in the program at the high school as well.
And no programs are going to be eliminated, correct?
No programs are being eliminated, certainly, or service models. Certainly, there are alterations. As you heard me talk about related to reading and math intervention, those primary interventions will be happening with classroom teachers, both at the elementary and middle school. But we were maintaining all of the student programs, again, with some adjustments. But students should not see a significant decrease in servicing or opportunities for them in the package that we're putting forward. Putting forward to you tonight.
Thank you.
You mentioned on one of your slides that I'm sorry, get back to where I was at here. Potential for fewer elective offerings for some students. Can you expound on that a little bit?
At the high school level?
Yes, correct.
I think that will factor depending on the schedule model that they have moving forward. We're trying to be as clear with people as to what some of the ramifications may be. So there may be some students who don't have as many courses in their schedule as they would have in other options. I know one of the priorities there is to get as many kids in classes and not in study halls or in other places where classes could be used. So that's more of a default that, yep, there might be some changes in electives. I don't know that we see that being a prevalent situation necessarily, but that would be one of the next steps here moving forward as the high school finalizes what they'll be doing moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
So knowing that 80% of the budget is staff, that's where you're going to get the most amount of money in reducing your budget. What's going to be the evaluation process of looking at the other 20% in terms of activities, athletics, other things that I think are very visible, however, make up a small portion of the budget?
Yeah, we've focused on recurring expenses. I mean, unapologetically. We've prioritized maintaining our compensation system as well as hoping to remain in stride with inflation when it comes to staff salary and benefits for those staff who are remaining with us or who may be choosing to come to us. But when it comes to other expenses such as you're outlining, we really haven't looked at those because they are such a fractional part of the budget. I mean, I think, as I mentioned, there's certainly attention to all of the expenses across the district. They just don't represent a very significant amount, but yet they have a very significant impact on students. So eliminating athletic contests, eliminating athletic teams or clubs or activities, those are obviously all very important to students and for some students why they're involved in our school. So we don't use the word comprehensive school district lightly because not all school districts are, nor have all school districts remained as such, as they have also worked through budget reductions like we have, and we've really prioritized that. As I said, I think 3 different times in the presentation, like the majority of these changes rest on the shoulders of staff moving forward.
With the increase in classroom sizes, but also with the projection of enrollment numbers going down, do you see that right sizes itself at whatever that future projection looks like, or do you think that this will continue to have higher class sizes?
Well, one of the reasons that the middle school, if you look at, the second round of cuts that Mr. Demarath talked about, and then these, the middle school has seen a dramatic reduction in staff, and that's because that initial pop of enrollment decline is there. So through this effort, I think the middle school has really corrected to meet what they have coming in or what we know will be coming into the middle school moving forward. I think had we not, through this work that we presented tonight, made that correction, I don't think there's any chance that we wouldn't have been coming back for additional layoffs next year at the middle school, as an example. At the elementary school, numbers are somewhat stable as far as being known, but somewhat inconsistent as to what's coming in our 4K and kindergarten programs. So that will be evaluated on a case-by-case basis as to whether or not we maintain 2 sections or 2 classes at each grade level in all 4 of the buildings, or if we go to 1 or in 1 or more, or whatever the case might be. We committed to maintaining 4 buildings with 4 different identities and 4 different sets of operations. We feel like, given the total enrollment of the elementary community at this time and frankly the priorities of our families, that was something that we prioritized as well, as to not disrupt many families in moving kids from one school to another once they've started in one of our elementary schools.
When you say previous cuts, you're talking about the ones through attrition, which was resignations and retirements, that those positions were just chosen not to be filled.
Right. So I think one of the things we tried to do tonight is, in Mr. Demarath's portion early is out of sight, out of mind. And I can guarantee you that those attritions or reductions that were made over the last of the court, year have not been out of the mind of any of us that are working in the schools. So I think it's important for us, and if at the end we tried to package as the cumulative impact, because it's not just the new package that we're talking about tonight, it's the cumulative impact of those 45 positions over the last year.
Can you talk about the administrative or the admin positions in the resignations, the cuts, the proposal tonight, how that has had an impact on the admin side of things?
We're not filling the Director of Communication and Community Engagement, and then, as noted, a number of the coordinating responsibilities have been laid onto administrative staff as well. I'm not sure if I'm answering if you had a different question in mind.
No. I think that addresses what's included in there, and were there any other administrative positions looked at in terms of, the possibility of vacating those positions?
The administrators, by statute, have contract renewals in January, so our administrators have a contract at this point moving forward.
Okay. And how significant is going to be the restructuring for the teachers?
I'd say significant. I'd be happy to elaborate, but I mean, we really tried to put it out there in the presentation. I mean, those are easy words: increase student time during the day, moving things outside of the day. Those are all easy words for someone to speak to, and they're much different when they're put into practice. I mean, I believe that, some good comes from most things, and in time, we will, well, not in time, we'll continue to grow as a school district, but this will definitely take some time to catch stride, I think, because it is significant. And it's significant K-12. It's not just that we're talking about one school. It's systemic institutional change. And we've tried to be, I'm sure many will argue about many of the things said tonight, but we've tried to be fairly even across the entirety of the district, as opposed to just zeroing in on one area and not the other, as well as trying to position for a year or two down the road. For instance, at the high school, we know within a year or two their enrollment is going to start declining. What's coming through the middle school is going to hit there. So this sort of correction now, whether it's staffing or in schedule, addressing that now will hopefully put us in a much better position than needing to do layoffs in another year or two as those enrollments start to drop, which they inevitably will.
There's mention on, basically it appears that all across the board is that teachers be teaching a greater percentage of the school day. Can you explain that to me a little bit more?
Sure. So at the elementary level, we talked about the elimination of one of the MAPLE rotations, or art, music, library, physical education. So when the board put that into place a few years ago, part of that effort was to A, bolster those rotations, but B, that time was allocated for teacher prep time. So by elimination of that, it does then take that prep time back to where it was a few years ago. At the middle school, currently, and there's a lot of exceptions, but generally speaking, staff are with students 6 of 8 periods. Again, very generally, lots of asterisks there. And generally speaking, moving forward, students will be with staff 7 periods a day at the middle school in various different capacities. And at the high school, in a multi-period day, you will see teacher prep time be virtually the same as what it is at the elementary and middle school. Maybe a few minutes different by level, but within the same ballpark for sure.
And in the proposal, it said $3.8 million of savings, but that savings doesn't get us, this is kind of to Jason and to you. Jason, you don't have to get up though. But this, I mean, this doesn't get us to the $5.4 million deficit that we still are going into the 2023-24 school year with.
So I'll tell you, there's no joy in this work.
Yeah.
Like, and people can think what they want. There's no joy in this work. This is incredible. But when you get to a number of 3.8 and you feel like you've packaged the best you can to best position moving forward, whether or not it brings people who admire the work, and then you put it into the data table that Mr. Demarath shared, and it shows you that that doesn't get us out of a need for a referendum for even 1 year, is a little disheartening. But I heard as I was presenting and those bullets of positions were read, the enormity in number that it takes to get to the numbers we're talking about, I'm hoping is reality for people now, because it's a fantastic amount of staff to get to $1 million, $2 million, $3.8 million. So I guess that's probably more than you wanted. As much as it was great to see some progress on this data table, it's also somewhat disheartening. At the same time, we need to do the work the community asked us to do, and we need to do it in a way that is helping the district continue to move forward. Because if we don't, support will continue to erode. Demonstration of fiscal prudence isn't an option for us. It's not something that we're wanting to do, but I would like to think that we took the charge very seriously, and we're addressing some of our naysayers that are, sharing lots of information or, dissent as to the value of public schools in Fort Atkinson. So we're really hoping that effort shows through that community, and that they see that we are heeding the direction that we were given, that cuts were necessary in order for them to consider supporting us in the future.
Yeah, I mean, and I would go beyond Fort Atkinson and say
yes.
support for public funding at the state level. I mean, just, the complex issues of state funding, and I think, Rebecca, you talked about, the school board, blaming others, the community blaming the school board and the the administration. I mean, there's such complex issues. And if funding would have matched what the Social Security Administration increases their costs for, we would be where we are today from state funding. We would be where we need to be at the 42 million that we were looking at to maintain and run the school as we have been last year, the year before. Instead, it's go to referendum, go to referendum, go to referendum, sitting on $7 billion in surplus. And it just is, go back to the community, go back to the community. And I understand that it's get the support at the local level, but people are feeling it. And Ethan, you said it, vote for public schools. I mean, or just go vote. But I think that, it's incredibly important. I mean, coming here tonight, I felt like I was coming to a funeral. I mean, it does. We are truly making life-changing decisions. I mean, there are teachers who have taught my kids, and it's incredibly emotional. But I really believe that for the long-term fiscal health of the district, and to have competitive programming, to bring in staff with a good pay and benefits package, we can't just go slash 16% of everyone's pay across the board, because that's essentially what it would be. And I think that that would make it so the district would really, really suffer. I mean, I think, Rebecca said we're going to have, the change in culture is readily apparent. No, it was Rebecca Christ said that the change in culture is readily apparent. Isn't that what you said, Rebecca? And it is. I mean, I felt it from my kids today texting me, and I feel it from the teachers, you feel it from the community. And I hope that the state will start to fund public schools as they're supposed to. I mean, we can look line item by line item, but the FAT can't equate to $6.8 million. And it's not in athletics, and it's not in the music department or the other, 20%. It's not in busing to a athletic program. I mean, it is our staff that we rely on for the education of our students. And unfortunately, this means that we have to cut staff. And I want to say that I trust the administrators at the schools and at the district level, that they looked at every angle and that they chose positions and people based on looking at every angle and how we can still service our students in the best way possible.
If I might this is an excellent opportunity. Earlier this evening at the podium, some numbers and contact information were given. And for those who may not be aware, the state legislature is in the process of working through the new biennial budget. So we have a budget that will be new this year, hopefully, that will take us through the next 2 years. And now is the time when input can be provided to our elected officials. And you don't need to be 18 to do that. So I would really encourage all of us who have been doing so already to continue, and for others, voices truly do matter. And while we may not always agree, I think those that are elected to represent us in Madison need to hear the concern and hear some of what's being shared this evening, because that truly could have a profound impact on the next biennial budget. That budget, when it's identified, if we're able to secure some additional funding, will diminish the ask for an operational referendum next spring, potentially. So I would encourage people to be part of that process.
I'm kind of put this with you, Jason, a little bit, and it's difficult not to think forward a little bit of what may happen 12 months from now, right? Obviously, with state funding still up in the air and things like that. What happens from here? Where does this go 12 months from now? Referendum or not, where does funding for the school district go in the next 12 months?
There certainly will be a need for a referendum. And a simple way to maybe explain it would be, over the past decade, the state has given us more than $200 per student increase from one year to the next once. The $3 million deficit is $1,200 a kid. And so to expect that the state will give us $1,200 a kid increase next year, and even then with declining enrollment and not keeping up with inflation, that won't even keep up in the future. So like I said, once in the last decade have we gotten a $200 per kid increase or more, and $3 million is $1,200 a kid.
So what you're saying, this isn't necessarily a Fort Atkinson thing?
Oh, no. Nope, there's been a record number of referendums across the state the last couple of years. And there are asks out there of the state legislature that's debating the budget right now of $1,200 to $1,500 a kid plus other revenue. And that ask is not even meeting what we would have gotten with regular CPI increases over the last decade. That number would be over $2,000 a kid.
Thank you for that insight.
Yep.
Yeah, this personally, this was, since election night, this is something I've obviously, like all of us sitting up here, has personally grappled with, and the numbers at which that we have to cut is never comfortable for where we're sitting at today. Our job up here is to be financially prudent to the taxpayers of the city of Fort Atkinson, while giving the highest level of education that we can for the children in our district. You know, it was, as Robin said, it was, you know, it was shocking. It was, you know, like a funeral coming in here today. And I want to be very clear that the staff is a certain and definite priority in this district. And you know, like all of you all, it's, you know, I can't tell you and express the gratitude that I have for you all. In a time, in a week that has been very stressful for all, multiple weeks it's been stressful for all. I hope that you know from the board that we appreciate you all. You know, I'm kind of following with my words here, but man, I mean it. I mean it. And we're sitting in this difficult position to have to make these difficult decisions of where and who and why and all these things. At the end of the day, the funding simply has not kept up with it. This is not a Fort Atkinson issue. This is an issue that public education has been grappling for a long time. And, you know, Amy and I, this is like the end of our 3 years here, and, you know, this to me has been the hardest issue to sit up here and work with. When we start to deal with, you know, people and the education of Fort Atkinson, it's very difficult, right? But at the end of the day, we will figure this out. We will continue to make things strides better towards a better school district in Fort Atkinson. These cuts aren't fun, but something that I do know we have inside of us is we have the ability to grow and learn from each other and grow and learn from times like this. It's never fun, but I want to tell you all that we appreciate you, you know, from all of us. So I'm at a bit of a loss for words.
No, you put it very well. I couldn't agree with you more. And speaking of the district being fiscally, financially prudent, one thing that wasn't mentioned here today is how little long-term debt we have.
Yeah.
Our boards in the past have made sure that the long-term debt that we did have has been paid off before it really came due. So when we're looking at our financial problems, long-term debt is not one of those problems. Wouldn't you agree?
Correct.
It is. I mean, and as difficult as it is to talk about being short in operational funding, the district is very fiscally sound in the areas that you're referencing and has always taken great pride in that case. We would love to see operational funding at a place where we can continue to feel that both sides of that equation are commensurate with one another.
And I do want to mention that in November, the capital referendum passed. So as we
Absolutely.
start seeing construction happening at the schools, it's not because there's a pot of money someplace, a magical pot of money that could have, you know, funded all this staff, that they're distinct in capital versus operational. And so that passed, and so those projects are going to be going forward. And I think the optics of that makes it seem contradictory to laying off staff. Well, you can, you know, change out this HVAC unit and you can, you know, redo this entrance, but you have to lay off 22 people. But that's because they're completely different referendums.
Good point.
I think that is a good point, and that's a question that I've had actually a few different times is, you know, you had the money from the capital referendum, just move some over. And we would have, but it doesn't work that way. You know, and as much as we're disappointed the operational didn't pass, I never want anyone to feel that the district is taking for granted the support for the capital referendum that passed. And we will see some fiscal plant improvements starting this summer. And I hope that those sort of visual monikers of the district moving forward will help people once again engage on the operational side with us again as well.
And there was a motion to, in previous board meetings prior to the April referendum, for repaving the track at the high school. That was needed. It had never been done. And that was with the condition that if the referendum doesn't pass, which we were all sitting there hoping that wasn't the case, if that contract could be voided. And it has been. So
Yeah, the morning after the operational referendum failed, Mr. Demarath notified, it was contractually written as such by Mr. Demarath, should it fail, that we would not be obligated. So an unfortunate deferment of that, but not an expenditure that we could afford either.
And I'm just pointing out that we're not using maintenance costs in a budget to repave the high school track when that could have paid for a teacher's salary or a couple people's salary for a year. That you know, we are being prudent about it. It's not just flippant, the decisions that are being made.
You know, and I think, as I tried to communicate in the presentation, as hard as these topics are we're talking about, we need to continue to be and to grow ourselves as the educational choice in the area, and to cease some of the quality that people are accustomed to, or some of the goods and services, or some of the activities, or some of the other things that people look for when they literally are shopping district to district to district. Those are the things that we need to continue, even as we're trying to recalibrate and reset given the fiscal constraints of the future. I think your point is good, because it feels a bit counterintuitive, but we can't not move forward. I mean, we had just even today a couple of open enrollment calls come through the office, and people shop for school districts. I mean, I don't know that that's a huge surprise, but we need to continue to be the preferred option in the area, because people will come when we are.
I did want to say I appreciate the community coming out, and I really appreciate the students coming out.
Yes.
Your voice isn't going to be heard unless you get up and speak, so always get up and speak. When you turn 18, go vote. That's a voice. And I also appreciate the care that is done. We don't have any elementary and middle schoolers, I don't think, but at the high school level, you guys probably all came through some of the district, but the care that was given by the teachers and the care that you're showing and how valuable education is to you. So I appreciate you coming out tonight.
I'm going to piggyback on that as well, Robin. You know, to appreciate that there's distinction between this understanding of fiscally being prudent in a business sense, and then there's this component of humanity that cannot have any value to it at all, because it is invaluable. And I'm going to try, maybe because it's just my teacher side, to see all of these students come up, you know, doing what they're supposed to do as citizens, doing their civic duty. I feel like that gives us hope in a very dark and heavy time. And that goes to show that our teachers should be commended, because they have instilled a value of their teaching here. I mean, it is commendable to see students come, speak very eloquently, very impressive, in such a way that says, hey, this is what we want, we're going to voice it. And as nervous as some have been, they did it. And no voice doesn't make a mark, a voice does. And so none of this is easy. I can't imagine what's going to happen in the next few days, but I agree we have to trust our administration, which I do, trust our teachers, trust our students, trust our community, and understanding that it's not just one part, it is all of us, and that we all need to understand that the contribution of a whole cannot become a whole until we all do it together.
Thank you.
And I would encourage the students also to be part of the solution. During this really hard time, try to create positivity. Try to, you know, just take what's happening, the block schedule at the high school versus going to an 8-day, you know, an 8-period schedule. That might not sound fun, but try to understand the difficult nature of the situation and how you can create positivity around it.
Thank you. Any other further comments or thoughts tonight? All right, we have a motion in front of us.
this, are we on C?
That is correct.
Be it resolved that a preliminary notice of non-renewal be issued to the following teachers. And then, instead of reading the names, I'm just going to say, as written in the agenda, and I so move.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Rogers, a second by Ms. Selly. All those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? Alrighty, moving on to item 7 tonight. Items for future board meetings.
Oh, thank you. Open enrollment requests, textbooks adoptions, individual certified staff contracts, the potential update of the compensation system, school nursing services report, the CC2 contract, and I'm sure we'll have some other items as well. Then, of course, the board has the reorganizational meeting, and just to be clear for the public, that's for the board to elect officers, given the past election. There's nothing related to any of the restructuring or budget issues that we've been talking about tonight. So,
Simply officers.
yeah, and that is Monday at 5:30, and it's simply to reorganize the leadership of the board.
All right, we have the last motion from us this evening.
Move to adjourn the Board of Education meeting.
Second?
All right, we have a motion by Ms. Selly, a second by Ms. Rogers. All those in favor?
Aye.
And those opposed? Okay. 7:57 adjournment. Thank you.